We okay to start, Liz?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so we're just going to do some consent training slides, and then we'll do a little study update with a chance for questions and answers. So just going on to the first thing, which is the definition of informed consent. This is often defined as a process by which the subject sort of voluntarily confirms their willingness to participate in a study after being fully informed in all aspects of the trial, and then having this documented on paper, usually in the form of an informed consent form, as well as the process relating to it. So just an overview. So we'll just be going through the sort of roles involved in the consent process, and looking at requirements and site procedures, as well as just focusing on retrospective consent, and looking at some common mistakes and corrections that occur. And then we'll go through things like the ECRF data entry, as well as a few scenarios and some work instructions that we now have in place. So here we have the various roles, and just to let you know, we have greyed out personal legal representative. As for paediatrics, this doesn't really apply. It's usually either the parent and guardian or a professional legal representative that we would get consent from. And then we have the witness who would be involved if consent is being taken verbally or remotely by telephone. So consent can be taken prospectively before the patient is enrolled, or it can be taken sort of by the parent and guardian. If they are en route, for example, we can do that by telephone. If they're not available, then we would approach the professional legal representative. If the professional legal representative is also not available, then we would look at delayed consent, which would be enrolling the patient because it's beneficial for them in an urgent situation where treatment is needs to be started immediately. And we'd then aim to get some sort of consent, at least professional legal representative consent, within 24 hours. Retrospective consent, so where consent was not taken by the parent or guardian, we would expect there to be attempts made to obtain this as soon as possible after the patient has been enrolled. So maybe when they come in, or if for some reason the parent or guardian is not capacitated, then this could be after hospital discharge as well. So here we just have a list of the different consents and the consent forms that would be used as well. So parent guardian consent, we would be using the full PIS on consent form, but we also have a summary version. And I'll sort of mention a bit later which ones we currently have in place and which ones are still being approved by ethics, but should be available very soon in the new year. Professional legal representative consent, we have a form for that. And then we have a video consent form as well for those who may request information in a different format or prefer not to read the full information sheet. And then, as I mentioned, we have the telephone or remote consent, and this would be applied either if the parent guardian is en route and they can be spoken to on telephone but have not arrived yet, or in the case where retrospective consent is being sought after hospital discharge. This should always be followed up with written consent. So the idea is that they do complete a paper written consent at some point, and this can be posted to the parent or guardian. But it would be best to get telephone consent first, just in case we don't receive the written consent, because there have been cases, as we know, with the adult population that we've recruited, where a relative or a patient may say, yes, we're going to post the form, and then it's never received at site. And we therefore have no sort of patient consent in place, which is not ideal. So the consent forms that we currently have are split into sort of 3 age groups. We have one for under 10-year-olds, we have one for 10 to 15-year-olds, and then we have one for 16 to 17-year-olds. And then the ones that we're waiting to currently be approved are the telephone consent form and the video consent form, and then the summary version of the information sheet and consent form, which is just a shorter version for those that don't want to read the full information. Sorry, we've got the audio left on this one. That was just a flow chart to sort of show the process of consent. So at site, we do need to have clear procedures in place for obtaining consent in an emergency setting, and for documenting the method of consent. Some sites may have a consent statement template in place where they prefer to sort of list all the information and place that in the medical notes. Other sites may just write the process directly in the medical notes, but I think this does cause a higher risk of maybe forgetting to document certain things, as you're sort of just thinking off the top of your head as you're writing. We do need to sort of check the validity of the professional legal representative, so making sure that they are independent of the study and that they are not on the delegation log before they sign the consent form. At the moment, the sponsor has released their work instruction for informed consent, which we can send out to all sites after this session. And with that work instruction, there's also an appendix which has sort of a tabulated summary of various types of consent issues that may arise and what action should be taken by both the monitor when they're conducting monitoring visits and by sites in order to resolve those issues or to document those issues. So just to go through the process that should be occurring at sites, we have the standard written consent procedure. So that would be having an interview with the parent or guardian, informing them of the study, providing them an opportunity to ask questions, giving them time to consider participation, and then they can sign the form. We just make sure that we provide them with a copy as well as place a copy in the medical notes, and document this on the ECRF as well as the medical notes, whether they're on paper or electronic medical records as well. In the case where the parent or guardian is not able to provide written consent, but they can provide verbal consent, there must be a witness, and the information sheet needs to be read and explained in the presence of this witness. And then again, it would just sort of be the same steps, just having an opportunity to ask questions, time to consider, and then ensuring that the witness also signs the consent form in addition to the parent and guardian, and then just ensuring those copies are given to them as well as filed in medical records. So information that we would like to be documented would be things like who informed the parent guardian or the pro-LR about the study, and when was this held or how was this held? Was it over the phone? Was it in person? The method of obtaining the informed consent. So, if it was the video one or the full written one or the summary version, that should be noted. Confirmation of the parent and guardian's capacity or incapacity, if there is a reason for that. And then for professional legal representative consent, as I mentioned, just confirming that they are independent of the study. And from that, we should be able to tell that the correct consent process was followed for REMAP CAP for obtaining the consent. A few additional items that we would also like to see documented in the medical notes. So this would be things like, did the parent and guardian ask any questions, or what they might have been? How much time they were perhaps given to consider study participation, the version of the PIS and consent form signed, and just confirmation that they were given a copy. Just to reiterate, the original copy of the consent form should be filed in the ISF, and then there should be a copy given to the patient and a copy filed in the medical records. Sometimes when we monitor, we do find that the original copy is not in the ISF, it's in the medical records, but it should be the other way around. If professional legal representative consent has been taken, we do need to see attempts have been made to obtain consent from the parent or guardian as soon as they were available, before hospital discharge of the child. If that's not possible, then we need to see that attempts were made after discharge during the follow-up period. And the follow-up period for this study is 180 days. And as I mentioned earlier, so it would be good if, at a bare minimum, we can get the telephone consent before posting out the written consent, just in case that is not returned. Just going on to common mistakes that we see on consent forms. We see things like the incorrect or missing study details, boxes being ticked rather than initialed or left blank. Sometimes there's missing signatures or missing dates and times or incorrect dates, incomplete names or improper names such as nicknames being written, the wrong version of the PIS or consent form being used. It may not be the latest version, or it could be a version that has had parts deleted or rearranged. And then original consent forms not filed in the ISF, as I just mentioned. Or the other major thing that we sometimes see is that the consent process is not documented in the medical records, and this makes it very difficult to trace whether consent has been taken if a paper form has been lost or misplaced. So that is very important. Just to go on to how we should rectify some of these mistakes. So it's fine for staff to add study information retrospectively and initial and date these changes on consent forms, things like the site name or number or the patient ID, that can be added by staff. Boxes being ticked rather than initialed, that cannot be corrected by staff. This needs to be done by the patient themselves. Ideally, they need to be reconsented, and they need to complete a new form with initials next to the boxes. If it's just something like a date that they haven't put down correctly, that they can just amend on the form and initial and date as well. But again, it needs to be done by the patient themselves. Missing signatures would require reconsent. And just to reiterate that if there is a missing signature, then that consent is technically not valid. So even if they have initialed all the boxes on the form, if they have not completed the signature, that consent is not valid. Equally, if they have completed the signatures and they haven't initialed all the boxes or some of the, the essential boxes, then that consent again is not valid. Things like incomplete names, this can be amended retrospectively. If it's staff names, it can be done by staff. If it's a patient name, then it needs to be done by patient. If the wrong version has been used, then again, we would require reconsenting the patient. And then just if you don't have the originals filed in the ISF, if we just ensure that we swap them around, and that should be fine. If you find that there is no process documented in the medical records, if it's sort of soon after the consent was taken, or maybe a few days or a week later, then and you it's fresh in your mind and you remember what was done, then we would ask for a retrospective note to be added to medical notes. If it's too late, then just if we could have a file note completed to document why it wasn't documented, whether it was oversight or whether too much was going on or whatever it was that happened. So looking at when patients discontinue study treatment or withdraw consent, study treatment being withdrawn does not mean that they can't be followed up. But if you can ask the parent or guardian if they're okay with the patient being followed up and data continuing to be collected. The reason for withdrawal from treatment should be documented in the source, and we can just continue the follow-up as required. But if they do withdraw consent, then that would need to be documented on the ECRF as well. Withdrawal of consent would be withdrawal from all study procedures. Again, we just need to document the reason for this and complete a consent event on the ECRF. Treatment would be stopped unless stopping immediately would cause harm, and that would be down to the treating clinician to decide. All follow-up and data collection would be stopped, and the patient record would be locked in the ECRF by our database team. So we have sorry, I'm just getting a bit of an echo. So just looking at the ECRF entry, we have instructions on how to complete the various forms through the ECRF completion guidelines. And then more specifically, we have work instruction for informed consent with the appendix that I mentioned earlier. A separate entry must be entered on the ECRF for each consent event. So, for example, if a professional legal representative consent was taken first, there would be one event for that. And then if there was a parent guardian consent taken afterwards, that would be another event. If the patient then withdrew, that would again be a third event added. So we do need individual events to be added for all consent types happening. And here there's just a few scenarios. So if a patient does die before a consent is obtained, for example, they may have been enrolled because it was beneficial for them to be included, but there was no one available. Let's say the parent or guardian was not available and the professional legal representative was not available. And then unexpectedly the patient dies. In this case, we would try and seek professional legal representative consent as a minimum. The parents should be made aware of their child's inclusion in the study. We may not think it's appropriate to ask them for consent, as in that situation they may be distressed. But as long as all of this is documented and we can see why things have happened, then that's fine. If parents remain incapacitated, we just need to see that attempts have been made to see if they have regained capacity up until day 180, and beyond that, we don't expect further attempts to be made. Again, it's just a matter of sort of documenting everything so that we can sort of see the story of how things went. So here is just an example of a section of the work instruction. So it shows, that if consent has been obtained, what the site action should be and whether or not it's a protocol deviation. So some items will be a protocol deviation and some won't. Some may just require a file note. I think it's about a 2-page document, so it's not too long. We may periodically send you the consent check log just to capture all sites' consents, because we will not be monitoring often, and some sites may not be monitored if they're deemed as low risk or lower recruiting sites. And this sort of just allows us to remotely check your consent procedures. So I thought it'd be useful just to let you know from a monitoring perspective what we look at when we go on site to monitor consents. So we look at things like the correct version being used, all fields being completed, and we sort of check the randomized domains that are correct on the form and match the ones on the database that have been entered for the patient. things like signatures, and then we cross-check staff that are delegated on the study, ensuring that all staff that have obtained consent are in the delegation log, apart from those that are professional legal representatives. Yep, so if there's no consent, we look at documented attempts as mentioned, and just any sort of other documentation that relates to the process. So this is an example of a consent form with mistakes. So as we can see, there's no study ID, and then with the name of the person taking consent, they've just put J.Kim, where we need a full first name as well as a full second name. There's also a couple of boxes that have been ticked rather than initialed. And then there's a time missing next to the date and time field. So yeah, so these are the sorts of things that we look for and we'll point out and list in our monitoring visit reports. Just before we go on to sort of the study update section, let me know if you have any questions or queries about the consent process. No questions? I can't believe it. Just wait another 30 seconds in case anything pops up in anyone's head.
I had a question. Sorry, it's not necessarily related to consent. A few of the issues I've had in recruiting some patients has been a language barrier. I was just wondering if there's any sort of progress with getting either the information sheets or maybe the summary information sheets or even the video in other languages.
Yeah, so with our patient information sheets that we've submitted with Substantial Amendment 42, once those are approved, we are looking at translating those in, I think, approximately like 10 to 15 languages. I think we did send out a sort of like survey to sites just to ask them which languages they required, just to see which ones were the top languages that are requested in each region or site. So yeah, we'll sort of pick them based on those. In regards to the video consent, it's difficult for us to translate the video. We know that YouTube has, it has the function to sort of translate it, but we can't verify that that's 100% correct. And it tends to be about 70–80% correct. So we can't say that that can be used for obtaining consent. So I think if a patient wants to watch the video in another language, they're welcome to, but they can't sign the video consent form for it. They would still have to read the full PIS, either in the translated language or in English, and sign the full PIS or the summary version. I think at the moment we haven't decided whether we're going to translate all the consent forms or just the sort of main PIS. I think that's something that we're still discussing.
Thank you. Do we have an approximate timeline for when those would be available?
It should be towards the end of February, early March. Yeah, it does depend on how quickly ethics get back to us in the new year, and then how long it might take for the translating company to complete the work. So yeah, but definitely not before Christmas.
Thank you.
Okay, I think if we don't have any more questions, then I'll move on to study update. So at the moment, we have 12 paediatric sites recruiting, and I wrote these slides yesterday, so it says 219 patients, but we actually have 222 patients as of today. 22 of them are paediatric, and we've had 8 recruited since November, so I think we're doing quite well, actually. That's probably 9. I'm sure we had a paediatric site today. yeah, so we are doing quite well so far. I think it was quiet September, October, but it started to pick up in November and December. And as I mentioned, we are waiting for ethics approval and MHRA approval for Substantial Amendment 42, where we submitted updated PISs and consent forms. This was based on the sponsor template. They sort of wanted to streamline the consent forms across all countries. So we've added a bit more detail. We've made the language a bit more lay, and we've tried to add in a table to sort of break up the text a bit, and just make language consistent across the various versions of the consent forms that we had. And then we've also submitted the SMPCs for all study drugs, and then labels for tocilizumab, which is the immune modulation drug. And then one question that I think sites have been asking is about the pediatric formulation of baloxavir. So the granules will be available at some point in the new year. We don't know exactly when yet, but Roche have told us that it will be in the new year. And so we have submitted the QP documents and various bits that they've given to us to ethics as well for approval. You may be aware that we're actually switching from commercial supply to the global clinical trial stock for baloxavir. There's a contract that's in process and being signed, and then following that, I think it's just that the labeling will be different. It will have clinical trial labeling, but it will come pre-labeled from Roche anyway. So the other thing I just wanted to touch on was our e-training logs that are now available on the website. So I think before we used to send a Word document and sort of ask that you list all your staff on that one training log. But just to make things a bit easier, and it's down to site preference, we also now have the electronic training log where each individual can just complete it after reviewing the module training materials. I'll just take you through the screenshots just to show you what it's like in case you haven't had a chance to look at it yet. So if you go to our website and you just go to sites, you will see that there is a training for staff section. If you click on that, it will then it will take you to the page. You'll see the adults training first. So if you just scroll down, you'll see the pediatrics. It will say pediatrics in big letters. And then these are the modules that will display for training. And then if you select a module, it will then show you the materials, which you can review. And then once you've done that, if you just click on the confirmation at the bottom, which just should then open up a pop-up box. And here we would just ask you to complete your details and then select the training version from the drop-down menu before clicking send. This will then send you an email to confirm that you've completed the training. And we just ask that you forward that confirmation to us. So that will just allow us to verify that you have completed the training and that someone else hasn't completed it on your behalf or anything. And then we will just file that in our TMF, and if you could file that in your ISFs as well. And yep, that's it. Any other questions relating to the study, and whether related to consent or not?
Can I ask, I'm having trouble finding, all the documents. I can't see them on the website.
Okay, which documents are you looking for specifically?
Well, I was looking today for the bit to record the samples, the swabs and things on, but just generally any documents, because I don't have the latest versions online of some of the working in the domains and different things.
Okay.
I think it's worth sharing screen, Aisha, and maybe talking through the website briefly.
Yep, just give me a second. I'll see if I can get the website up. Let me just stop sharing these slides.
Thanks.
I don't know whether it's perhaps the way it might appear on your web page, but if I can get it up, let me just show you. Can you see that?
Yep. Can see
Yep.
that.
Okay, so this is the website, and then you can see down here there's a list. So we've got protocols, and that's where all the domain-specific appendices would be, along with the choice pages. We've got the local information pack, which is what R&D normally needs when we're setting up the study.
Right.
We've got the paper training logs are here. So what I just showed you was for the electronic training logs, but if you just want the bog standard traditional training logs, that will be under here.
My page does not look like your page at all.
Have you
Oh,
clicked the
okay.
documentation section at the top?
I don't have a documentation
Yeah,
section, so
can they just add sort of, I think I've been through this, so it's Yolanda. So I think if there are different links. So if
Yes.
if you click on the org, like probably
Yes.
world sort of is different. So you have to go specifically to your UK.
Oh,
So it's co.uk. Lots of people do this. You have to go to the UK site.
got you.
Right.
Yolanda beat me to it.
so I'm clicking on the wrong link then.
Yeah, so you need to remapcap.co.uk, not remapcap.org.
Shall I pop it in the chat?
remap.cap.co.uk. Yeah, pop it in the chat, and then I can. That'll be it. I knew
That'll be it.
when I've done
always a
training before, I knew it was really easy to find, and I have been through all these sections searching for it.
Yeah, I've been through this today, so randomized the patient, so that's why I know.
Excellent. I'm glad it's not just me.
No, and I'm one of the investigators from the Imperial site, and I still have done this on more than one occasion, gone to the wrong website. So you know,
We do have lots of different websites, don't we, in Remap Cap? So yeah, it's
Yes.
choosing the right one.
That's great. Now that I know I'm in the wrong thing, it'll be so much easier.
it is. It's a great website if you go to the right website.
Yes, yes, that explains it. Thank you.
I think we've had a question in the chat as well about if we have to use the e-training logs, or we can stick to the paper versions if we prefer.
You can stick to the paper versions. That's absolutely fine. It's just we know some different people have different preferences, and sometimes it's difficult to get hold of staff in order to complete the logs. So yeah, whatever you prefer is fine. Is there anything else in the chat? Can't see.
No other questions yet.
Okay. We'll just hang around for another 3, 4, 5 minutes in case anyone has any questions.
Yeah, can they ask, probably not related to consent, sort of, but to the randomization website? So just sort of enrolled one patient. So I think I spoke to Aisha today. Is that right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
It all worked. So the only thing, there are a couple of questions, but one I probably got. One is about the radiologically confirmed consolidation or changes on the X-ray, and there is answer yes or no, but some patients will not have had chest X-ray, so perhaps sort of needs another option, sort of not X-ray not done or something. So because answering no, we don't know. So because X-ray hasn't been done, so I don't know. It's minor thing, but it's
Okay.
whether
I can check the DSA just to see what it says in there. Liz, I don't know if you've come across that during the eligibility question.
No, but it is something that would be good to address, I think, because we're seeing quite a lot of gastro and things, so which we'd still like to, those children can progress to be severely unwell. So it'd be good to think about how we can fix that as a glitch. Maybe we can bring that up.
Yeah, because if you click no, it means that there are no changes. But that's wrong, sort of, because they might have consolidation, they might have something, sort of, it's just X-ray hasn't been done. So
I believe that question will be updated as well when our new protocol comes through. So it might be that we might not be able to change that just now, but when the new protocol comes through next year, we'll have a new update for the ECRF, and that question will be updated too.
We had a question about a child, which I took a stance on, who'd been given a 2 dose of Tamiflu 10 days ago, separate, and then have now just 2 doses, then we're not on Tamiflu, have been relatively well, and then have now developed flu or are unwell, and we wanted to randomize. And I felt that Tamiflu was unrelated because it's 10 days apart to this episode. And
This
so
is it.
we
I
just
think-
ignored the previous Tamiflu.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to share that as something that we had a discussion about locally. So they've been kind of given it in not for flu, as it were.
Yeah, I think Tony would agree. It's sort of the incident, isn't it? So this is considered as a new one.
A separate
so
episode. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
It's just these things. I think there's quite a lot of flu around at the moment, as we're seeing. I'm sure you guys are super busy. We've had some really sick children. One of the issues from a REMAP CAP perspective is that most of the kids aren't coming in with respiratory illness, and obviously this is traditionally a pneumonia platform trial, but actually most of the kids that we're seeing, I'm sure it's the same for the other sites, are actually not necessarily coming in with respiratory conditions, but so they're mostly being randomized to the antiviral arm at the moment. I don't know, Yolanta, are you seeing anybody in oxygen?
Oh yeah, so we managed to get picky, I think maybe 2 patients now, and quite a few now in oxygen sort of. So we randomized 1 yesterday in oxygen, 1 today, 1 is in A&E in oxygen, so it's quite a few.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we started with a bit of flu B, and now we've moved into flu A. So I think that the flu A is likely to bring more of the respiratory kids in.
One question we had from virology sort of, so if the patient's admitted to PICU with flu A, if H1N1 swine flu, so apparently I think 10% resistant to oseltamivir, so especially those on PICU sort of, so they're trying to do typing quickly, but if it's H1N1,
which most of the flu A is H1N1 so far.
H1N1.
I was on a call with
with
UKHSA, so it's mostly going to be so far it's mostly been H1N1 this year. It's quite a lot in the Midlands as well. Talking to the people, I see that made everybody put their hand up. I'm going to be wrong. You're going to tell me I'm wrong.
Interesting, because we get like daily sort of flu data. It's most of them not H1. It's minority H1. Yeah, it's minority. Yeah.
Oh, that's what the UKHSA told me on Tuesday. Yesterday. I've definitely been a long week, but Irva and Marieka have put up their hands, so I'm going to find out that might be a London. No, because Irva, you're in the Evelina, aren't you?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. I was just going to ask it's completely a different question.
Oh right, okay.
Sorry. I was just going to ask. We have been recently. Sorry, this is Arva. I'm working with the Evelina team as a research fellow and contributing to the study as SABI. But my question was regarding the children with multiple different bugs spotted on the sort of investigations. Like we had this discussion over the last couple of days because we have so many children at the moment in PICU, but they're all positive for flu A, flu B, but also RSV, rhinovirus, etc. So we decided not to include those children because we were not sure whether it was the symptoms were caused by influenza, but I don't know about your
I think you
experience.
should include them because actually it is actually the flu that's most likely to be pathogenic out of those that you're describing, and you will get your CT values, and if you can include that, we'll try and gather all that information because that's part of being in a trial. But I think it's most likely at the moment with the epidemiology we have respiratory wise that it's the flu that's putting them in PICU. And so I think do try and include them, and we can pick that apart in the analysis later. And it may be that we see different outcomes in children with multiple bugs on board or what have you, but please include them if they are flu positive.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Marieka. We can't hear you if you're speaking. Oh.
While Marika is trying to log it in, can I just ask, can we have multiple associate PIs? We have got some trainees finishing their training and they desperately want to become.
Everybody's welcome.
We've tried to put,
I mean, I think, well, that depends on your site. That's actually down to your local NHR, I think.
Right,
but I think from our perspective, you can have as many associate PIs as you want.
We need enthusiasts, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think from the NIHR's perspective, as long as the PI can support them. So if you have the sort of backing from the PI, I think you can have.
Perfect, lovely. Thank you. Okay.
I can't imagine a single PI in the country who doesn't want more people to help them. But anyway.
Yeah.
So you've only had that's very interesting. So definitely I'm going to go back and ask UKHSA if I misunderstood what they said when I was chatting yesterday, but they were saying they'd seen a lot of H1N1 and we were worried. When we were discussing why we were worried, is because actually we saw that kids did really badly with this the last time it was H1N1, and that's why we were having a conversation. So I will check, because maybe I misunderstood that conversation.
Yeah, I've just looked sort of, and I say we get no daily sort of about the and weekly, so lots of other, but not each one.
Yeah, go on.
What I was gonna say, so let's say if it's H1N1 and kids are sick on PICU, I say if it's 10% resistant to oseltamivir, at what point you would want the zanamivir?
Zanamivir isn't part of, I mean,
I know, but that's just that's the question.
I think that's really tricky. So if they're not randomized, because we don't have baloxavir stock at the moment, which would be, and I guess you can't choose to have baloxavir. It's really difficult though, because it's meant to be a pragmatic real world treatment trial. So if you really think that they are resistant to oseltamivir, I think you probably have to start it, and we have to record that information and make a note of it, and, take that into account in the analysis, because you have to do what's right as the leading clinician for that patient. And I guess, yeah, that's part of the reason why we're doing this study at the moment. Yeah, Marieka, we've had a couple of really nasty CNS ones. She's written cerebritis with H1, and that's the worry, is we saw a lot of that the last time we had a lot of H1N1 was there's a lot of brain involvement. And so I think it is important, Jolanta, that I think if you think that they're resistant, that you do what's right clinically for the patient, and we'll just have to get the information and make a plan around it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Marek, I'm sorry we can't hear you. But I would agree that when we look at the flu, I think we're probably going to have a busy flu season in pediatrics this year, because it's already much busier than it's been since 2019. Even though actually, if you look at the national data, we're slightly ahead of where we were from a flu vaccine perspective in school children, which is really great. I think that we're still, because of the strain that's circulating, and for whatever reason, we're likely to see more children. So it'd be really great if we can recruit as many as possible. But also, just a shout out, can you remind all your community paediatric colleagues to vaccinate the neurodisabled cohort, who are the ones we unfortunately see with the most severe disease, to just encourage them, if they haven't been vaccinated, to get vaccinated. Sorry, better for the children, not so much for the study. But yeah. Judith has her hand up.
Hello, sorry, it took some time to find the unmute button. I'm Judith from Bristol, PICU research nurse. A very different question. We had our first patient enrolled into this study. Whoop whoop for us. And I'm just trying to upload the data, and I got a little bit stuck with the medication bit. It's asking about antibiotic administration, and the antibiotic what the patient had is not on the list. Is there a other button, or how can I add that?
I assume there would be another button, Aisha or Lucy.
I will have to look into that, and then I can email you and let you know.
What antibiotic is it?
It's coamoxiclav.
Oh, that has to be on the list.
It's not. Well, I must be blind then if it's on the list.
I'll have a look at the completion guide while we're carrying on. But yeah,
Okay.
I'd assume it would be on the list.
It's in alphabetical order, isn't it?
Oh.
So it's colistin is the closest, which starts with CO.
Is it under Augmentin? Because we're really bad in using a brand name, she said. Feeling bad.
Amoxicillin, azithromycin. I cannot say Augmentin either.
Okay, can we make sure we add it if it's not on the list?
Yeah.
That would be a little bit of an oversight. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Okay, so well, unless I'm blind, then please point it out for me, because I just cannot see it. Sorry.
Thank you for highlighting.
That's okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I missed it. I was talking. What I was missing, antibiotic.
Yeah, coamoxiclav is not on the list.
Oh no, it is. Sorry, I've just randomized today. So it is. It's amoxicillin with clavulanic acid. If you put
Oh, is it? Oh, the top
Comoxiclav,
one.
is
Oh,
yeah. So it's
okay.
amoxiclav. Yeah, it is
I
there.
have to say, I was like,
Sorry.
I'm sure I've looked through that form and I would have.
Thank
No,
you.
yeah, no, it is there. So I put Comox today. So you see, just it's fresh off the hot off the press because just randomized the patient. So I put Comox, doesn't come up, but then amoxicillin. There's a list of antibiotics. You can
Yeah,
look.
it's that one is with clavulanic
Clavulanic
acid.
acid,
So
yeah,
that's the one.
correct,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you
yeah.
very much. Thanks.
Okay, and excellent stewardship there, Yolanta, that you're not on anything stronger than Comox. Yeah, gold star to the Bristol team. Sanjay, ever on when you do these things now. Okay. Brilliant. I guess the other question is, over the Christmas holidays, what are the best ways of people contacting the team? And which days are there people around, given that there's bank holidays and the likes?
So Imperial is closed from the end of the day on the Friday the 20th, and then we're returning back to work on the 2nd of January, which is a Thursday, I think. But in between, there are a couple of days where the ICNARC coordinator will be available, and then we have inbox cover between us as well. So we will be answering any sort of urgent queries. And we will leave our telephone numbers on our out of offices so that you can contact us if you do have any urgent queries, and then we can forward them to Tony if need be, or yourself, Liz, if that's okay.
So I'm off the 23rd to the 27th, but we'll probably pick up emails, and otherwise people can email me if they're really stuck, and I'll put that in the chat. Just in case, but most people probably have my email, but hopefully. So maybe a good time for everyone to go and do their refresher bits so they can ask any queries before
Good idea.
Imperial closes.
Have a go entering data and
yeah. I think the most key bit is obviously the randomization, because most of the rest of it can be done retrospectively. But yeah, just make sure that that's all working at your site and you have your password and all that stuff. Brilliant.
Happy Christmas.
Oh.
Happy Christmas.
of course.
Welcome. Don't get flu.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Go and get your flu vaccine if you haven't had it. Yeah.
Well, a couple of kids had flu jab and came to pick you.
Yes.
Had flu jab and came to pick you.
Although I spoke again with this conversation I was having with UKHSA yesterday, they think that the match between the strains that they're seeing in the vaccine are good. However, as we know, vaccine efficacy is always a question with flu. So that's worrying, Yolanta, because all the ones we've had have not been vaccinated.
Yeah, mine is, but I think they only had like the flu jab a week or 10 days ago. I just wonder whether I was
too late.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Let's hope.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Brilliant. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.